thanks for inviting. So I'll jump right in because there's not too much time and I have lots of slides. And I would really like to get into more interesting stuff rather than just formal presentation of the project. So as it was already mentioned, it's a DFG funded project focusing on the evolution of Islamic societies and algorithmic analysis into social history. So the first question is why? Arabic tradition is very vast and understudied. I mean, don't need to convince people here, I guess. But things like Hadith al-Hin, the bibliographical dictionary, gives us about 40,000 titles. Brockelman and his Geschichte has something a similar number. In Iran alone, we have over 1 million manuscripts cataloged, and we have no idea how many have been published. And just to give you kind of an idea with numbers, in the Open ITI corpus, the project that I've been part of since for several years, we have at the moment actually not 64, but 6,700 unique titles of Arabic sources. Historical and biographical texts, chronicles, biographical collections, obituary chronicles constitute a significant part of this corpus. There's probably about, again, the exact number is not very clear, but about 300 of them digitized. They run into over 100 million tokens for words, if that makes more sense. We have over 500,000 biographical records, and potentially we have information to produce a robust model of the development of the Islamic world, but as whatever Qadi put it in one of the articles, this information was our blessing and our curse because it's so much that it's very difficult to just go through it. So the methodological solution that I offer in the project is the corpus-based research and a range of computational methods like natural language processing, text-to-use identification methods, topic model, keywords extraction, all this kind of stuff that allows us to extract information and to analyze it in very efficient manner. And in using big terms, do sort of a distant reading of all this vast information. So the chronology and geography of the project is corpus-driven and exploratory. What it means is that technically the project doesn't. There is a limit to the first million of years of Islamic history. Sorry, for the first 1,000 years of Islamic history. It's millennium I meant to say. But this is how the text, the biographical text is distributed in the corpus, and you can see that there's actually a little bit of a dip in the 9th and the 10th century, and very few texts that we have afterwards. And quite significant number falls on the very early period, but those are short texts, and the Mamluk period. And if we look at the count of biographies, the highest number of biographies has been preserved during the Mamluk period. You see there's over 100,000 biographies in that period alone. Geography is also exploratory in a sense that, again, here's the map that's based on Georgette Kernim's atlas of the early Islamic world, and you can see the expanse of the Islamic world colors highlight different provinces. But if we look at the texts, then the geographical coverage is quite different. Certain areas, particularly like we have the coverage here, right in North Africa, there's a settlements, but the information on that region is very, very scarce in most of the sources. So the geography will be similarly established in the exploratory manner, as far as we can go with the text that we have. What's the main approach to the textual sources? So the main focus of the project is on what I call minimal units of information. That is, say, descriptions of discrete events from chronicles, biographical records from biographical collections. And the premise here is that narratives are consciously constructed, while myriads of details scattered across vast texts cannot be subjected to the same level of agenda-driven editing. And in large quantities such, agenda-resistant data is likely to provide more reliable historical evidence. So this minimal units of information will be aggregated into clusters of related historical information, which will be consequently studied. And In more technical terms, each primary source will be broken in such units and then will be re-aggregated into master chronicle, which I'll talk a little bit later if I have enough time. So, research methods employed in the project can be divided into this kind of 3 large groups. First is text mining, data mining methods for generating metadata layers that allow to group pieces of information into meaningful clusters. Then it's modeling and analysis of extracted information, and finally more traditional close reading approaches to important clusters of information. The team will look like this. There will be 3 major streams of study. The first focus will be on social structure and ability, composition of Islamic societies, elites mostly, right, from the data that we have, major social transformation, cultural geography, and mobility patterns. The second stream will be focusing on political power and conflict, studying the extent of political control, geographical and chronological dimensions, and patterns of interactions with local population. And the third will focus on environmental change and disasters, climate change, plagues, floods, droughts, also in geographical and chronological dimensions, and their effect on local populations. The general structure of the project will look something like this, where by the end the goal is to come up with some kind of synthesis of all this data into one coherent picture. So the broad objectives that the project has include historical and biographical. So it's historical development of the Islamic world. The first secondary objective is historiographical, aimed at understanding historiographical tradition. The second secondary objective is methodological indication, focusing on the development of resources, teaching and building the field of what my collaborators call digital Islamic studies. The area of understanding historiographical tradition will focus on things like understanding editions, and essentially using digital methods and trying to understand the differences between editions, which is particularly important for texts which are like multi-volume texts, which are very difficult to assess in any traditional manner, to study both in its sources, how the authors collect information from previous sources, how we use it, and what kind of strategies they use in terms of picking and choosing information, and how they edit it. Again, if I get to go into the details, I'll show the examples specifically. And the methodological and educational objective will focus on the development of such resources as Master Chronicle, a long-array atlas of Islam, and a methodological handbook of teaching methods that also includes teaching courses and workshop. I've managed to drag in quite a lot of interesting people into the project as collaborators, particularly the people at the bottom. I think names of not quite known to the field here, but Nizar Hamish is a specialist in Arabic NLP and corpus linguistics, and Peter Turchin is the mathematician who kind of turned historian using mathematical methods for modeling historical developments. So that's a very quick overview, rather boring, since it's just technical and just still gives you an idea of what it is. But here I would like to now talk more about the methodological and how the things will be more specifically implemented. So I kind of draw a lot of inspiration from Vannevar Bush, who came up with this idea of the dynamics machine, which allows us to work to struggle effectively against the growing mountain of research. Just to give you an idea what this mountain of research is, this is the graph that shows the publications in Indic Islamicus about the Islamic world. So by 2021, we had over 640,000 books and articles and chapters on the Islamic world, and the dynamic is very important. So by the end of the life of Ignaz Goldsira, there was only 1% of what we have now been published about the Islamic world. By the end of the life of Joseph Schacht, there was about 8.5%. When my advisor defended in 1986, it was only about 20% of what we have right now. And when my report was defending in around like 2013, it was about 80%. So just to give you an idea, since 2001, less than 20 years, the number of publications about the Islamic world doubled. And if this kind of trend will continue, we'll have 1.2 billion by year 2040. So it's the amount of research is really like staggering, and we need, so that's the need for this kind of food, a real digital turn, not just little things here and there, but serious reconsideration of what we do. And again, this guy, Vladimir came up with this idea of the analytical machine that will supplement our thinking methods and will think to a degree for us. He was talking about generating associated trails between information that will allow to put things together. Interestingly enough, he published this long time ago. It was 1945, but it was not possible to implement because technology was still actually analog, not digital, and many things didn't really work out. But there's a lot of cool stuff that he came up with. So that's kind of the analog computer where you connect to information and create trails of information that you can then exchange and do your research. And interestingly enough, the example that he is giving is about the Turkish composite bow in the article. And that's how computers used to look in the 1930s. And they could do only one thing, like the software and the hardware was one. You couldn't really reprogram it for something else. But in any case, the point here is that this analytical machine that will supplement our thinking methods. And we have now sort of these three domains of digital humanities where we create digital avatars of our object that we study, aggregations of avatars, and implement, apply different computational methods. And with them, we can build the networks of new knowledge. And that was sort of experiment that I've done with just research publications. So in a similar manner as I was describing, each publication is broken down into pieces. So each line here represents one publication. And these are just, let's say, paragraphs or page ranges, something like this. And we can break them down and we can run different analysis in order to identify things that are similar to each other and connect them and create a network through which we can travel and find, discover interesting trails. And let me just show how it could work. Here I'm using secondary literature, but the idea is very similar. So here's the sort of the memoics machine that I built as part of my own messing around. So let's say we take an article we're interested in, right? Here it's Christopher Melchert's article, Sufism, Competing Movements in Nishapur. As a result of these analytical procedures, again, I'm not going into details here, but we can get a summary that shows us all the keywords from this article, and you can see words like Nishapur, Sufis, which are in the title, so probably not very helpful, but it also comes up with words like Karamiya, Madanatiya, Vahabi, and Sulami, which are actually really important for the article, so but these are extracted automatically. Here below you can see the suggested publications, automatically suggested based on this analysis, that you may want to check if you're interested in this area. And more, the suggestions we can look in a little bit of a network view. You see here 3 clusters of publications which are automatically suggested based on this computational analysis, and there are 3 clusters. One, this sort of pinkish, it's a cluster on learned circles in general. The green one is on Sufi, publications on Sufism, and the blue one is publications on Nishapur. So it's the arrangement of this data that allows you using one entry point, but then going diverting into different directions depending on what you're interested in. But the information is suggested algorithmically, not in any particular sort of strong manner. And here's an example of a sort of a newest matching. The system was built also in a manner that analyzes bits and pieces and points to specific sections. So, for example, again, flipping through the article of Christopher Melchert, I get suggestions to go and check Ayub Palmer's book, and actually specifically a section on Nishapur and the development of Sufism as meta-identity, a section from Karam Mustafa's book on the spread of Baghdadi Sufism, and specifically Khorasan and Transoxiana, and Tarani and Malamatiya, and so on and so on. So that's the general implementation. And now imagine the same kind of thing, but done for Arabic sources. We showed you this already. We break down this historical biographical sources in these bits and pieces. We organize them based on, again, this different kind of similarity measures, and we rearrange them into one big historical source where we can do different kinds of readings. So we can have now chronological reading or geochronological reading of all the aggregated information. We can do a thematic reading, only looking for pieces that fall into the same topic, or do historiographical reading, which essentially here represented by the descriptions of the same individuals or the same events, but collected from different pieces. And I'm stopping here.